discussing today the difference between Chassidus Chabad and Chassidus Chagas. Chabad means Chachma Bina Das. Chagas is Chesed Gvura Tiferes. These are two different teachings of Chassidus. Generally, in a nutshell, Chabad is Lubavitch Chassidus, and Chagas are all other groups of Chassidus, circles of Chassidus that place a stressing on emotions or other character traits of the person, not so much on the intellect as Chabad does. So we begin with a Fabrengen that the Rebbe spoke at the first Yud Shvat when the Rebbe became Rebbe, when he accepted the leadership, and this was by delivering his first Maimer, his first discourse. When the Rebbe delivered his first discourse, this is basically when it was official, formal, that the Rebbe accepted the leadership. Until then, the Rebbe stayed away from delivering a discourse, a Maimer, because the Maimer meant accepting the leadership. So after the Maimer, the Rebbe said as follows: Ko'eis hakshivu Yehudim. Now Yidden, listen to me. The Rebbe mentions it right after the Maimer. Bichlal, this was the first statement he made after the Maimer. There were sichas before the Maimer, but this was a very powerful sicha that the Rebbe spoke, and this was guidance for Chabad Chassidim. They should not rely only on the Rebbe, but they have to do also on their own. So the Rebbe says, Bichlal b'Chabad hoisat v'yein Chabad, there was the demand, Shetia v'dossi shekol echad v'achas b'atzmi. In Chabad, there was the expectation, the teachings, that a person has to work on his own. The leili istamach ala Rabbeim, and not to rely on the Rabbeim. And this is where the difference comes in between Chabad and other Chassidus. You got a page? Oh,
thank you.
The difference between the Shita of Peyom, which means the other Chassidus besides Chabad, some actually are from Russia. The Shitas Chabad is the Shitas Peyom is V'tzadik v'menase yichya. There's a pasuk, a verse that it says V'tzadik v'menase yichya, that a tzaddik lives with his belief. Artikle yichya ela yechaya. Yichya means living alone. Yechaya means sustaining others. By the Shita of Peyom, the Polish Rebbe says that they, with their Keach, they are sustaining their Chassidim. In other words, their Chassidim are dependent on them, and the Rebbes do not demand from them an own initiative. Aval onu Chabad, but us Chabad, we on our own have to work it through. With the 248 organs, and the 365 veins and arteries of the body, and likewise the 248 organs and 365 veins of the neshama. So basically, Chabad teaches us that there needs to be initiative on the part of the person. Okay, going on now to the next paragraph. Hakel b'dei shamayim chutz miyira shamayim. Everything is b'dei shamayim, in the hands of heaven, besides fear of Hashem, which means fear of Hashem, serving Hashem, that is dependent on the person. So then the Rebbe continues, I am not turning down from helping people. How much it is possible to help people. Rather, the Rebbe is saying is not that I am standing from the side and you guys are completely on your own. Since everything is in the hands of heaven besides Yira Shamayim, if their Aveda, there won't be any initiative on the part of the person, Ma yeyol ze shanesnim ksovim menagnim nigunim ve'imrim l'chaim. What will help, or what benefit will it be that they're giving ksovim, singing the gunim and saying l'chaim? Now, these three concepts is a whole world of the relationship between a chassid and a rebbe. Between a chassid and a rebbe, there are basic concepts. One is the union of ksovim, which ksovim basically could mean two things. It could mean discourses. I never heard any explanation of what it actually means, so I'm interpreting it the way we traditionally know in the relationship between a chassid and a rebbe. So Neila, ksovim could be discourses, my mother. But ksovim could also be, what is the benefit of giving or the other meaning that he gives my modern discourses and this nigunim song, which is basically nigunim by Fabrengen, and they say l'chaim. So the Rebbe says, what's the benefit of that if there's no initiative on the part of the person himself? And this is the difference between Chabad and other chassidus. So we're now up to Sif Beis. To sum up the Sif, the difference between Chassidus Chabad and other Chassidus is that Chassidus Chabad stresses an own initiative. On the other hand, other Chassidus, which are referred to as Pelish Chassidus, that's where many movements of Chassidus grew, blossomed. They stress more that the tzaddik is the one that takes care of everything. For those that just came in, there's copies over here. There's enough copies. Okay, so now we go on to Sif Beis. This is another sikha, part of a sikha that the Rebbe delivered in the early years of the Nesios. The Rebbe said as follows: my father-in-law, the Rebbe, previous Rebbe, said once, he does not want to minimize chas v'sholem, the image of anybody. In other words, he doesn't want to put anybody down. There's copies over here. Those that came in, there's enough copies. His desire is only to explain the unique quality of what he speaks about. Which means to say, he doesn't want to put another person or another movement down, but he wants to focus on the positive of a second person. So the same sense here also, the Rebbe is making an introduction that by speaking about Chabad, it's not to put down any other movement. So the Rebbe says as follows: Gam b'hadiburato, also in the speaking now, the intention is not to minimize chas v'sholem somebody else, but the focus is to speak about the unique quality of Chabad. The difference between Shittas Chabad and Chassidus Peon could be only now. The Rebbe is saying, Lo'osid when Mashiach will come, then everybody will turn to the Shitta of Chabad. But now the Rebbe says there can be a difference between Chabad and other Shittas. The Shitta of Chabad is Shakol Yehudi, every Yid, Tzarech Liyis Yageya, needs to exert himself on understanding Elikus, godliness. This is basically what Chabad teaches. Chabad teaches that everyone should exert themselves and understand it, not just believe it, not only Amunah, that it remains beyond the mind of the person, but basically internalizes it and understands it like he understands something in this physical world. And for this he needs exertion. Vishitas Chassidus Peom, and the Shita of Chassidus Peom, Ki Yodua, the word of Rab Shlomo Kalviner, who was in the time of the Alter Rebbe, and he held different than the Alter Rebbe. He held that in Polish circles, in Chassidish circles, outside of Chabad, the focus is that the tzaddik is the one that takes care of everything. So what he said was, "V'tzaddik b'menase yichya." Atikra yichya elo yichaya. Yichya means living alone. Yichaya means sustaining others. What does that mean? Hainu sheyeshni hatzaddik shemis yageya. We have the tzaddik that he's exerting himself. V'chol hashar, and whatever is happening around him, hine b'keach b'al yedei emunas tzaddikim sheyesh lahem. Mechaya esam hatzaddik. With the keach and through the belief in the tzaddik that they have, that is how he sustains them.
So can you just
Which this is a basically a inyan which is by other chassidus. Yeah.
Could you just repeat that again?
Chassidus Chabad is demands of a yid that he should exert himself to understand Elikus. Shita of Peon is that the tzaddik takes care of everything. Poland. Chassidus Poland, all the Chassidus in today that you have outside of Chabad are mostly from Poland.
Right, okay.
Poland, that's what it's called in Hebrew, in Yiddish.
But they also have like a Torah, like something written. They have also to understand what there is something.
It's written in short. It's not long Torahs.
But I thought with Chabad as well, you should believe when he started like the Rabbi as well.
That's one thing, but the Rebbe does not want people to focus only on him. The Rebbe says this is not what Chabad is about. Not to look at him by davening, not to look at him in other times. The Rebbe says focus on your own Aveda. Derech, already mentioning this word, there was a Maisa once that somebody was advertising Chabad. They were writing it in an article or in some kind of a flyer, etc. And they were writing that in Chabad we have miracles, v'chulu v'chulu. So the Rebbe said like this: the first thing you should write is that in Chabad there's learning, there's davening, and if they need miracles, they have miracles. Which means the last resort is miracles. The Rebbe never wanted people should rely on him when it came to the Aveda of Torah mitzvahs. No such thing. Munah is a separate inyan, and but a person has to learn the Rebbe's Torah. It's not just to look at the Rebbe all day. So the Rebbe continues. Stay shitas elo. These two shitas, these two approaches, teachings are shaykh only now, are relevant only in the present. But b'negia la'osid, b'negia to the upcoming redemption, everybody agrees that that's when it will be fulfilled. The prophecy, Umola Oretz Deyas Avaya Kamayim Layom Mechasek. That the earth will be filled with knowledge of Hashem like water that covers the ocean. This is a prophecy. And it says, Umola Oretz Deya knowledge. So B'meila Kach, that means, Shalachol B'nei Yisrael, that every Yid will have an understanding in godliness. As it says, Ki Kulam Yedu Eisi, they'll all know him. So the Rebbe continues, Achshav now is the time before Mashiach. And B'meila, in the same sense, that for all the inyanim that are coming up in the future, we need to make a preparation, we need to prepare a vessel in the time of exile. And since the vessel needs to be similar to the revelation that will take place later, therefore there's also a need now that it should be reflecting what will take place when everyone will be knowledgeable of Hashem. Which, what does this mean? That a person now has to already exert himself to understand godliness. This is the preparation for the upcoming redemption. Valderach Deisa, as it's mentioned in Pri Eitz Chaim in Kabbalah, and there are those that also have this minig bepeil, that Friday afternoon they taste from the foods of Shabbos. The Rebbe says there are those that do it bepeil. But the Rebbe in the Sikha mentions that he did not see this by the Friedrich Rebbe discussed them of tasting something, begashmis, physically from something that's being prepared for Shabbos. In the same sense that a person has to taste Friday from something of Shabbos, in the same sense we now should be tasting from the spiritual revelations that will take place when the redemption is present. The redemption is compared to Shabbos. 6,000 years is the world. The time now is Friday afternoon. As we hold in years 5,780, this is already Friday afternoon. If you divide the 6,000 years according to the hours of the day. Surely there needs to be tasting, and the taste gives them the merit of life. Studying Chassidus and understanding it, because through this a person comes to the state of Kulam Yedu Esi, they'll all be knowledgeable of Hashem. And then the Rebbe continues. We see, in the physical sense, we see in the world, there are small naharis, small rivers, there are big rivers, till there's the big river, till there's the Yam HaGodol, the ocean, Atlantic Ocean. And we see, Shakol, as a person gets closer to the Yam HaGodol, to the big ocean, so there are the smaller rivers that pour into the bigger rivers, and the bigger rivers pour into the ocean, till all of them end up in the Yam HaGodol. Yam HaGodol, there's a special bracha to make when a person sees it once in 30 days. So Osas HaYom HaGodol. So Osas HaYom HaGodol, which is basically praising Hashem for making this Yam HaGodol, this big ocean. V'digmas, once in 30 days. V'digmasi beruchnius. What does it mean in a spiritual sense? That as we are coming and approaching and getting closer to the arrival of Mashiach, which then it'll be that the ocean will be filled with more water and the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem, which then what it'll be is that the earth will be knowledgeable of Hashem like water that fills the ocean. And now we go on, next page. Yeah.
Is that in the Siddur, that rock up to the ocean?
What? Yam HaGodol? Yam HaGodol is considered the ocean. I mean, there's nothing bigger than that.
Right, but is it mentioned in the Siddur?
In the Siddur, oh, the Siddur, it's before benching, it should be. I don't know if in the English Siddur it was placed here, but
That's the blessing you say when it's clear.
Yom HaGodol, I don't think it's mentioned yet. It's not in here, but it's in the Birchas HaLenin of the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. So also says Yom HaGodol. I think it comes from Gemara, from the Mishnah Gemara. So now we go on to page 2, discussing how it took place over the generations. B'tchila zman is galas Baal Shem Tov, in the beginning of the revelation time of the Baal Shem Tov, there were countries to which the light revelation of Chassidus did not reach. Either they were not vessels for it, or there was no need for it, because they managed in fear of Hashem and serving Hashem in their own way what they did up till then. Umizman lizman, from time to time, the spreading and broadening of Teiras Hachsidus more and more through the leaders of Chabad, that they were involved in the union of Yofutzum, spreading the well springs forward to the outside, that also the outside should receive the wells of the Baal Shem Tov, as it is in Shittas Chabad, in a comprehensive way, and especially in the latest generations, the Nisim were involved in this project with a broadness and extending it and reaching everywhere. So B'meila, the Rebbe says that as we become closer to Bias HaMashiach, all the rivers and all the pathways, everything ends up in the Yam HaGodel, which is the Teiras HaBaal Shem Tov Al Pishitas Chabad. The Rebbe stresses Al Pishitas Chabad because the Baal Shem Tov himself was short Teiras. They were not like comprehensive and brought down in a way that a person should be able to understand them in a very broad sense, like the Alter Rebbe taught. So therefore, the Rebbe stresses always the Baal Shem Tov Al Pishitas Chabad. Now we go on to another difference between, which actually it's all based on this verse, V'tzadik v'menose yichya, Hatikre yichya le'yechaya. By Chabad, it is yichya, the tzaddik lives, and the chassidim have to do their part. By other chassidim, it is basically yechaya, the tzaddik takes care of everything. So Siv Gimel. The difference between Chassidus Chabad and other Chassidus, this in Peon, the Shita in Peon is Tzadik v'menase yichya. Tzadik v'menase yichya means that you don't need any understanding, but only Amunah. And that's the skashas to the Tzadik is not through understanding the Torah of the Tzadik, but only Chagas, excitement, emotions. That's the way he connects to the Tzadik. By Chabad, we demand pnimius, inwardness, inner commitment, inner sincerity. V'gam inyan ha'искashrus, and also the inyan of iskashrus is through the learning the Torah of the Rebbe in a way that a person understands it. And this is how a person can connect in an inner and a deeper way with his Rebbe. Which means basically, it goes together. That because the connection by Peilush Chassidim between a Chassid and a Rebbe is more external, and therefore there is no demand that it should be internalized in the person. Only the union of excitement, a regesh, a feeling. There needs to be something in a relationship. A Rebbe to a Chassid to a Rebbe. By Chabad, because Pnimius is demanded, and because his kashrus has to be in an inward way, in a more Pnimiustic level and standard, therefore there's a need to learn his Torah, which this is something that comes down in a Pnimius of the person. Because Chabad demands Pnimius. The way that it can be Pnimius is not just on the surface, but it has to be by studying and B'meila connecting with the mind of the Rebbe. By learning his Torah, we become connected with him. And as the Rebbe once said in the Sikha, not only connecting to him, we're connecting with a level of the Rebbe which is higher yet than Yechida Shevanefesh. That is a very big chidush. The Rebbe mentions it in the Sikha in Tavshin Yudale, Parsha Nitzovim, that the union of learning his Torah is connecting with him as a higher yet than Yechida Shevanefesh. In a sense, we can understand it based on a certain maimer that's mentioned in Chassidus. Maybe a little some window or something to open.
You want it open, or you?
Yeah, open up a little.
It might be clean.
Oh, it's the cleaning is coming from. Okay, so maybe it is. No, it's just the air was. It's mentioned in Medrash that a neshama has 5 names. Chamisha Shemes Nikru La, which are basically Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, Chaya, and Yechida. These are 5 names. Most of the time, probably over 90%, or maybe even 95% of the places where Chassidus discusses it, where the Rabbeim discuss it, Yechida Shebenefesh is the highest level. Nefesh, Ruach, and Neshama, Chaya, Yechida, it's on top. There's a certain mimer that the Rabbeim said on Purim. The Rebbe Rashab said, the Frierdiker Rebbe probably said, the Rebbe has a few mimerim on it, that because we are saying that the neshama has 5 names, from this we understand that the neshama itself is higher than all the names. Nikrullah, it's a name. A name is something external. It's not the essence of the person. What does a person need a name for? Neshama L'mayla didn't have a name. When it comes down here, the neshama needs a name in order that somebody, neshama neguf, in order that somebody should be able to refer to the person. So he needs a name. It's like a handle. Rabbi Rashab says a lashon beis yad. It's a handle. So mele name is only external. So this is what it says. Chamisha shemes nikru la. 5 names were given to her, but she alone is higher than all of them. So that's the etzem that's higher than Yechida. So B'meila, through learning the Torah of the Rebbe, you become connected with the Rebbe. And now the Rebbe goes into another difference that there is in custom between Chassidus Chabad and Polish Chassidus. This is the reason for the difference between Chassidus Chabad and Chassidus Pale. Benegea giving Shalom Rabbi. This is an old issue. By Polish Chassidim, they give Shalom to the Rebbe. They shake his hand. By the Rebbe, there's no such thing. And if a group of Polish Chassidim came to the Rebbe, escorting their Rebbe, and after Yechidus, they requested if the Rebbe would take Shalom, it's called taking Shalom. So the Rebbe agreed. The Rebbe said, since it's your custom, I'll do it. But in Chabad, there's no such inyan. There are 2 interesting incidents that took place. One was in 1958. It was Purim during a Fabrengen, that it seemed like a Polish Chassid went over to the Rebbe, or Hungarian, and wanted to shake hands, because by them, when they say L'chaim, they shake hands. That's in addition to shaking hands, B'chlal. They shake hands. The reason is, as the Rebbe once mentioned, although he didn't say it clearly, but that's the explanation that's given by Polish Chassidim, that B'shas they shake hands by saying L'chaim. The point in that is because the hand is yad, is called yad in Hebrew. The reason the hand is called yad is because there's 14 joints in the hand. Yudalet Pirkin. There are 14 sections. And when 2 hands shake each other, it becomes chavches, which is the union of keyach, strength. That is why by Polish Chassidim, when they say L'chaim, they shake hands. So Mela, this person wanted to shake hands with the Rebbe. So the Rebbe answered, I'll say it first in Yiddish, Mir gleben ungeben de Hand. We trust without a handshake. A handshake is like a business trust. Sometimes in halacha it's called kiyas kaf. When a person gives the other one the hand, this is already like a contract, like an oral commitment. So the Rebbe says we trust without a handshake. That's the way the Rebbe said it then. Another time, there was a young boy. It was a Rosh Hashanah. The Rebbe was coming back from Tashlich, from Botanical Gardens, where the Rebbe would walk for Tashlich until the mid-60s. And a lot of Polish were there because they lived in the community, in the neighborhood. And some of them went over to give Shalom to the Rebbe. So there was a young bacher that he also went over to give Shalom, a Lubavitcher. So the Rebbe told him, by us it's not customary to give Shalom. So basically that's the difference between Chabad and other Chassidus. By Chabad there's no union of giving Shalom, shaking the hand of the Rebbe. Mashenkim, by others, there is such a custom. Another story actually, that it was the beginning of the Rebbe's Nesius. Chassidim Mamish stayed away from the Rebbe. Pashut B'Gashmis, they didn't shake hands with the Rebbe. The Rebbe came, they went out of the way. And there was a Chassid and his son that was speaking to the Rebbe. The father was speaking to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe shook the hand of the child. The child didn't want to shake back. The Rebbe says, ay. The Rebbe says, you ruined him already also. in other words, by already telling him not to shake hands. This is basically the Nikuda. And in fact, this goes back to a difference in opinion between the two Talmudim, between the Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi. The Babylonian Talmud says there is a custom that a Talmud gives shalom to his Rav, to his teacher. In Yerushalmi, it's exactly the opposite. It says, Re'uni ne'orim v'nachbo. Young people saw me and they disappeared. This is exactly what takes place in Chabad. The Chassidim, they hide away. Okay, so now we're going to see what the difference is of Chassidus in this union of giving shalom. Be'amuna yash yeser eir. There's more light in belief. Ubemele gamma bitol. Therefore, the state of nullification that comes as a result of belief is a complete nullification. Bitol b'mtzius. Ve'in tzrichem zehirus kol kach. And therefore, you do not need so much caution, because you're in a state of bittul, so it won't hurt in any way that you are giving shalom to your Rav. Giving shalom to the Rav is a step. It's a step of connecting to the Rav, feeling equal to the Rav. That's how they go. A person gives to his friend. So because Peilush Chassidus is more the union of Amunah, which Amunah is the union of light, and it's a state of nullification, Bittul HaMitzias, so therefore there's no need for an extra caution, and therefore he can allow himself to give shalom to his Rav. By Chabad, which is the union of understanding, understanding means he is someone, he's not in a state of nullification. There is something to understand, and there is someone that understands, who understands. So therefore he's a Metzias. Because he's a Metzias, so when it comes to the relationship to his Rebbe, he's in a state of nullification. So he wouldn't even think of giving shalom to his Rav. He's not his equal. So therefore, by Peilush Chassidus, it's tzaddik b'menosa yichya. The tzaddik takes care of everything because he's in a state of nullification, and he doesn't have his own initiative. He's not an independent thinker, and therefore he can afford himself to give shalom to Rabbi, and the tzaddik takes care of everything. Mashen came by Chabad. It's not so, because he is a Metzias. He is an entity for himself. He is an understander. He's an independent thinker, and therefore, neagim we don't give shalom l'Rav. So the Rebbe says, but together with that, in Chabad, there's a unique quality. The quality of understanding means that b'shas he understands what his Rav is saying, b'meila then his understanding is completely committed to the Rebbe. And when he has to make a certain decision, what he needs to do, he knows exactly what his Rebbe feels about it. Although he didn't read about it, although he didn't hear it from someone else, but basically his mind is already trained, frame of thinking like his Rebbe. So this is a deeper bittul yet. Okay, now we go on to Sif Dalet, on page 2. Yodua, that by the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid there were many shittas. The first two leaders of Chassidus, and it's divided into two groups. Aleph is the shitta of Chassidus Peil. As mentioned earlier, Tzaddik v'Menosa Yechaya, he sustains. By that the study of Pnimis Ateit is done through the Tzaddik Hador, the Tzaddik of the generation, and through connecting to him with Amunah Tzaddikim, he sustains them, he exempts them, and they just need to do Maisa. They just need to do, in a practical sense, whatever they're doing. Learning and davening, mitzvahs, shirayim, which they chapes this after their Rebbe is actually done with a Suda, so whatever is left over, there's a union of grabbing what's left over from his meal, which also has a source in the Jerusalem Talmud, of eating from a Suda of Talmidei Chachamim. So basically, their union is Maisa, that's all. No, not thinking, not initiative on the part of Chassidim. So the Rebbe says all the inyanim of Pnimis HaTeira also reflected in the Nigla de Teira. The Alter Rebbe writes in Hilchos Talmud Teira in a more explained format. But the Arizal says that every Yid needs to go through many life cycles until they manage to complete the whole Teira. Also, the mitzvahs that are shaykh to Kein and Levi, although they are not a Kein or a Levi, but they need to learn it. Besides mitzvahs atluyas b'melech, mitzvahs that only the melech has, the king has, because he exempts all of them with that. But otherwise, he has to study all the commandments of Torah. Shalachein. Therefore, a person has to go through different life cycles to complete that. The neshama has to come down again to complete that part of the learning. Besides, the mitzvahs that are connected with the melech, because the melech exempts the person from it. So he's already included in it, and he has already fulfilled what he needs to fulfill. So going on to page 3. From this, we also understand, Benigir, the study of Pnimis HaTeira, that there is a shita, there is at least a dimension, a certain significance, a certain value in the fact that a neshama klalis, a general neshama, by her studying Teira, she is meitzi, she exempts all the neshamas that are connected with her by their belief in him. It means that basically there's al derech, like there's a melech that exempts the whole nation with his mitzvahs. In the same sense, a Pelish Rebbe, when it comes to studying, he takes care of it. When it comes to Maisa doing, it's their Aveda. But otherwise, he sustains them with everything. He carries them. He carries them on his shoulder.
They have to do their mitzvah as well.
That's what I'm saying. Mitzvahs they have to do, but not the studying, not the spiritual part of it. Okay, then we come on to Shitas Chassidus Chabad. As mentioned earlier, there's mitzvahs, there is learning. The haskola, intellect, which is in Chabad, is not in other Chassidus. Because the other Chassidus, the Rebbes don't demand it, they take care of it, and their Chassidim only have to do practical mitzvahs as observant Yidden. What else are they? How are they called Chassidim? They follow the Rebbe. They follow the teachings of the Rebbe. What does the Rebbe demand from them? Almost nothing.
But they learn as well. They learn in yeshiva as well.
Learning, but I'm talking about initiative. They're learning like everybody else learns. Like a literature person learns also. What's the difference? There's no Chassidus. The teachings of, there's no stress on the teachings of Chassidus by them. There's no stress on Aveda that they should do things, initiative on their own. They're doing because they're commanded. They told them to do mitzvahs, they're doing mitzvahs. There's nothing else.
You can see it in the way that we are doing with Tzoyin. Like, basically, it's only Chabad doing Tzoyin. Because other, I'm not critics, I don't know what to say, but you see that all the students in the world, they are all studying. Of course, because the Torah is for everyone, but in Chabad, we also take the Torah outside of the shul, outside of the study, and we spread it to the world. We want others.
That's one factor. That's Maisa. That we're already, how we are different than others that outreach, thinking about someone else. But in addition to that, Chabad teaches exertion. Chabad wants a person should exert their mind to inspire oneself with the emotions and fulfill Torah mitzvahs as a whole. So basically, Chabad starts from the head, comes down to the feet. It starts from mind, intellect, then comes to the heart, emotions, then comes to the hands and feet, fulfilling. By the world, by other Chassidus, it's from the heart to the feet. They don't put any stress on the intellect. In fact, there's one group of Chassidus that does not allow them to study the Tanya. Believe it or not, Chassidus. But they don't allow them. Why? Because they feel it's too deep, it's too intellectual, and their focus is the heart. That's why it's called Chagas. Chagas is chesed, gvura, tiferes, the emotions. Chabad is intellect. So the Rebbe continues. The Sif Beis, that Shidduch Chabad did not accept this Seder, but that everyone has to on his own study Pnimis HaTeira. And they designated that, instituted that as a important factor. Ukiyodu HaSipur, as it is known, the story that when Rabbi Tzadik, Rav Shlomo Kaliner, who was a counterpart of the Alter Rebbe at the same time, asked permission to travel and visit certain cities that were actually the territory of the Alter Rebbe. The territory of Chabad. In general, the Alter Rebbe was masking, but one of the conditions that he made with him was that these places, we need to draw down the Amshachas by studying Pnimis HaTeira, not only Amun and Tzaddik. They have to study it, and it should become part of them. It should be internalized, it should permeate them, not only belief in a tzaddik. And there was the difference between the two opinions. The Alter Rebbe felt you need Chabad, it should permeate and be internalized on the person, and exertion on the part of the person. Rav Shlomo Kalina felt no, tzaddik v'menasi yichi, he takes care of everything. He exempts others from learning Pnimis HaTeira. And that's why they don't teach it. If they teach it very brief. A tish, as it's called a tish is basically the tzaddik sitting by a suda and speaking for chassidim is very short. A short Torah, half hour. And then they have shirayim, and then they go home. So they have bazel beba. They have this world, and they will have the world to come. They have this world that they can rest on Shabbos, and they can do other things. They have a whole Shabbos in front of them, even if it's a winter Shabbos. In Chabad, there's no such concept. It's exactly the opposite. Chabad, there were times that the Rebbe would bring mamish up till sunset to Shkia, sometimes even past Shkia. Without Minchen, then without Ma'ariv, then we went home. So Akoponim, that's the union of Chabad. Chabad is elaboration in a comprehensive way. How the Sichos from the Rebbe, every Fabringen of the Rabbeim was basically bringing down Chassidus in a logical manner. Hashenkin by others, it's a kurze word. Many Chassidim amongst these circles outside of Chabad do not understand these concepts. Even if they hear sometimes the concept, it's not explained thoroughly because that's not their thing. It's a Teda. It's a Teda. It's called a kurze Teda, short Teda. That's what they're known as. By the Alter Rebbe himself was also like that. Before the Alter Rebbe was arrested, before Yutas Kislev, the Maimorim were short Maimorim. They were more inflammatory, they were more inspiring, the hearts of Chassidim and Yidden in general. But after Peterburg, after Yutas Kislev, the Alter Rebbe began a new phase, as he was told by the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher Maggid when they visited him in prison, that now starts a whole new phase in spreading Chassidus in great length and detail. The Alter Rebbe started to say longer Maimorim. Yeah.
So they like so they are more focused like how to say working with Nefesh Abamis, and they don't work with Nefesh Elokis like I'm.
That's one thing, but they're not even to work with the Nefesh Abamis in a healthy way. You need to have intellect in order to be able to approach the Nefesh Abamis, because the Nefesh Abamis needs you need an agent, a middle person, a middle party that should really speak to the Nefesh Abamis. That middle party is called Nefesh HaSichlis. It's another Nefesh that's in the middle. But by them, it's a Chatchila only becoming excited, emotions, and that's it. Not so much thoroughly making a deep impact on the Nefesh Abamis. Because they're not using the tool of intellect. Unless they're just training themselves in a very minor standard to connect to schlep the Nefesh Abamis with them, to train him, to start working on him. But in a thorough way, Chabad is the one that actually has this keach of impacting the Nefesh Abamis. Yeah.
So I don't understand how the Baal Shem Tov can have said both. Like, how can both have come from the Baal Shem Tov? Like, it seems so different from each other.
There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says there is Aftalion, and then after that it says his Talmidim were Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai are two opposite extremes, and both are coming from the same one. The thing is that each one is inclined to a certain direction, which means Hillel is Chesed, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, as we had it last week. The Dr. Tanya, his neshama is from Chesed, therefore he's lenient. Shammai is harsher, his neshama is from Gvura, so therefore he's harsher. And therefore each one, this is the way they look at it in an intellectual way. Whenever they look at halacha, this is what they're inclined to. Although sometimes we find that Hillel is harsh and stricter than Beis Shammai, because each one has from the other. But in a revealed and an obvious state, it's Hillel is the Mekel. It's more lenient. So you have it in a lot of time. I mean, the Rebbe Rashab explains that. How could it be two Talmidim should see it different? Because each one is actually seeing something else, interpreting it. Their mind filters it in a different way. Okay, so now we're just going to skip this part in order to be able to continue to another inyan, which is a very interesting inyan. Page 4. Let's see, some of you remember it from last year. Okay, this is a very unusual sikha. This is a sikha from the Rebbe from 1950. Shabbos Re'eh, that's blessing the month of Elul, and the Rebbe bases this sikha on a long story in the difference between Chassidim Gufa, between Chassidei Peil and Chassidei Chabad. So the Rebbe says like this in Sif Hey, page 4. Al Pizeh Yesh Levair, we can explain the words of the Frierdiker Rebbe that he described in a long story the difference between Chassidim Gufa. In addition to the difference between Chassidim and non-Chassidim, also the difference between Chassidei Chabad and Chassidei Peil. The Chassidei Peil have this world and the world to come. Chassidei Chabad werden ausgerissen. They're tortured in both. Ne'elam hazeh, ne'elam haba, nothing goes easy. And the Rebbe explains, when a Chassid from Peil travels to his Rebbe, the Torah is short, the Shirayim is a lot, the Frat Yom Tov is a lot of food, and the tzaddik lead to take something, and the rest Chassidim chap. B'chol HaSudas and all the Sudas. Then they dance, and that's how the whole Zman goes through Aveda B'Simcha. You enjoy, it's a joyous month, for example, Tisha. Before he goes back to his house, he returns home, he goes into the Rebbe to part from him, to Gezegen and Zach, and he asks his blessing, requests his blessing for everything he needs. Children, health, parnasa, everything in a broad sense way. He's asking a bracha for his older daughter that needs a shidduch. He's asking for parnasa, and his Rebbe promises him, and he comes back home, he tells his balabasta, his wife, about the requests and brachas that he received from his Rebbe, and she's also happy from his traveling. The Mele, when he wants to travel again, she helps him, and she gives him food for the way, kletzlach mit herring, and much money for the trip. That he has also Elam Hazeh. So he has both Elam Hazeh. After 120, he goes up Lamaila and Elam Haba, and Bezen Shal Maila asks him, what's happening with him? Comes bitter, he feels uncomfortable. But he has, generally a person feels bitter, what is he going to show for the court, for the heavenly court? He has a ready answer. I was a chassid of this Rebbe, the tzaddik v'menasa yichya, he sustained me. And they're asking him, did you fulfill everything the Rebbe told you? He says, yeah, my Rebbe gave me brachas. He told me I should be Hashem Ateiru mitzvahs. I should have a shir and limud ateiru. That's it, the basics. And then I did. And when they're starting to ask him, Das elakei avicha, tzipisa b'merkava, did you learn something of pnimius ateiru? Did you learn something of chassidus? He says, they taught me that emunah is needed. Tzaddik b'menasa yichya, tikri yichya l'chai, and I have emunah. I believe. And they also told me I shouldn't delve into Maisa Merkava, into the heavenly chariot to study things that are beyond our understanding. and I fulfilled it. And wherever I see the word Atzilus, or Tzimtzum, or Kav, I ran away from there like the distance of an arrow. Who am I and what am I? And b'mufla mimcha, I'm not going to research something that's beyond and higher than my level. Ubemeila, since Amunah, the Rebbe says he has over his head. And all the Yidna Mamina b'nei Mamina, but befrat adas Chasidim, by Chasidim, is doch nicht shaykh to sagen, it's not shaykh to say, to even estimate how much Amunah a Chassid has. And the words of his Rebbe he fulfilled in doing and in what not to do. The Mela, the whole Gan Eden Elam Haba, nothing is sufficient for him. He did everything. Chassid Chabad, when he travels to his Rebbe, he pushes. He doesn't push to receive Shirayim, but to hear the Maimah. Ulepa'omim, it's at the big pushing. It's for him difficult to hear and understand the Maimah. Then he goes into the Rebbe. He's embarrassed to speak about physical needs. Panosa, Shidduchim, Shekain, after he heard the Maimah, the Rebbe speaks about Atzilus and higher than Atzilus, how will he take his time of the Rebbe? How will he take the time of his Rebbe to tell him that his wife is not giving him peace because he doesn't have any food in the house? He doesn't have any meat, he doesn't have any bread, meat for Shabbos, black bread in the middle of the week. The grocer, the grocery man doesn't want to give him any more on borrowing, on loan. The Balacheves, he owes them money. The Mamish, really, they're on his case. From the Rebbe, he's asking, love of Hashem, fear of Hashem, Kabbalah Seil, he should be able to daven without any alien thoughts. He should have a feeling, a sense, and understanding in the word Chassidus v'Kayetze B'Zeh. The Rebbe gives him his brachas, comes back home, his balabasta, knowing that the Rebbe's brachas help. She says, what did the Rebbe promise? B'negia to Panosa, b'negia to Naden, alimony, that they give after the wedding for his older daughter. So he says about these things he didn't speak with the Rebbe. He only spoke about love of Hashem, fear of Hashem, and davening without distractions of Panosa concern. Move on me'elav, it's understood that he gets a chilik from her. She really gives him over the head for that. When he wants to go to the Rebbe again, she screams that better he should stay in the city. Yaskir means he should lease himself as a chazan or a shamish and make some money. Doesn't allow him to travel to there. Doesn't give him anything. So the Rebbe says, Elam hazeh, he doesn't have. This physical world, he doesn't have. He doesn't benefit from it. Now going on to the last page. After 120, he comes to Elam Haba. They ask him, what chassid are you? He says, with a breakheit, with a broadness, with a pride, a Lubavitcher chassid, a Chabadnik. You know what the Russian Tevis Chabad is? The abbreviation, the acronym? He says, yeah, sure, Chachma bin Adas. He says, what does it mean? Amunah alone is not sufficient, but you also need to know and understand. Das Elikei Avicha, you have to bring it down, internalize it. If so, let's test your knowledge. The Rebbe says, Vertach bitter, it becomes bitter, and you remain silent. So they asked him, did your Rebbe not teach you that? Did he not demand it from you? He says, yeah, my Rebbe taught me, demanded from me. I heard one maimer and another maimer and another maimer. And even when I did not have enough money for the expenses of the trip, and I was not able to travel to the Rebbe, even by walking, so the Rebbe sent me the maimer, that I was able to learn it in my own house. The mail begins the Chiro Drisha, so the whole inquiry starts, how you talking? How you talking that you're coming empty-handed if you had all these inyanim that your Rebbe gave you? Move a mail of the Rebbe says it's understood what the end result is. So this is basically the Rebbe discussing the difference between a Chassid Chabad and a Chassid Chagas. The Chassid Chabad has with Gerissen, torn in both worlds. Mashenke Lachaset Chagas has both worlds. Here we have Shirayim, not too much demanded from him. When it comes to Elam Haba, he did everything right. Okay, so now we go on to see Vov, an interesting comment that Rebbe made, that there's a difference between Chabad and Chagas, but the Rebbe says we are not negating or putting down. So this is a sikha in the middle of the 70s, it should be. That in Parsha Vayera, the Rebbe says in the Fabrengen, Shabbos Vayera, that there's a difference between Chabad and Chagas, but the Rebbe says we're not negating any other chassidus. And Chas v'shalom to say that another chassidus is not on a high level, on a high standard. The Rebbe says, V'horaya, the Alter Rebbe, when he needed to compile his siddur, he had 60 siddurim in front of him, 60 nuschos, which means that all of them were taken in consideration when he compiled the siddur. So that shows that they are significant. So the Rebbe says, how could we put down someone else's nusach, or how could we put down a different chassidus? There is different levels. The Rebbe says, al derech, like we find in Kedusha, there are many levels. Al derech, like we find in Emes, there's Emes Lamite. So in the same sense, Benegeya to the general Knuas Chassidus. Any questions? Yeah.
You said before, when we know Hasidus, we can connect to the level from a higher level than
Yechidim.
Yechidah Sheba Nefesh.
Yeah.
That's when we can